Okay. All right, let's look at, these are both what we call absolute value equations. And let's recall the rules that we have. Let's do the first one. When we want to solve an absolute value equation, and we'll know it's an absolute value equation because we'll see these two straight lines. They're not parentheses, but they're really like enclosing something. It could be all by itself. There could be other things outside of it, etc. In any case, whenever you want to solve an absolute value equation, your first step has to be to isolate the absolute value, which means I'm looking at this 3 is a problem. We have to have this all by itself. I don't care that there's things inside, but that whole thing inside those two straight lines has to be by itself. So the first thing I'm going to do is try to get rid of this 3, and I'll do it by subtracting 3 from both sides. And that'll give me the absolute value of 2x minus 5 equaling 1 minus 3, which is negative 2. Step 1, isolate your absolute value. Step 2, look at the number that's on the other side of the equal sign.
You can write down the steps.
You want me to write down those steps for you?
Yes.
Or can I just tell them to you and you'll write them down?
You write them down.
Okay. You see this section of the board? I'll do it over here. So step 1, isolate. You'll see, English is not my forte. I know English, but I'm going to use, does that make sense when I say isolate and I put this? It means isolate this.
Yeah.
Okay. Step 2, look at the number that's on the other side of the equal sign. So look at the number. What am I looking for? I'm just looking to see if it's positive or negative. If it's positive, you go further. If it's negative, stop. There's no solution. And this is a symbol that we use for no solution. Now, I saw somebody put in x equals 0. This is not a 0. This is a 0 with a line through it. That means no solution. And you could just say no solution. This problem has no solution. Why? Because it's impossible for the absolute value of anything to be negative. The whole definition of an absolute value is that it's always positive. So to say that the absolute value is negative is impossible. There's no solution. Did anybody get that answer? Anybody?
But I put a 0.
Okay, it's not, so I just want to get a different marker because this one is not working. I thought when you put 0 that that's what you meant, but 0 is not. To say x equals 0 means the number 0 is the answer. When I say this, I'm telling you there's absolutely no answer. So make sure, because especially if you did this on Delta Math and you wrote 0 and you didn't write no solution, they would obviously mark you wrong. I understood that's what you meant, but it's really, you understand why that was not the correct way to word that answer.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, so now let's go. So this has no solution. And again, you could either write it like this, or you could write the word no solution. either way. And if it's a multiple choice question, you have to look how they word it. But don't write the answer is 0, because that would be, they might do that. They might give you 0 as an answer, but that would be a trick. The answer is no answer. So now let's go to the second one. I don't have to go any further. Once there's no solution, I'm finished. So let's go to the next one. Again, I have to isolate my absolute value. So I'm going to now bring this 3 to the other side. So now I have the absolute value of 4 minus 2x equals, now 11 minus 3 is 8. And I start the process again. I've isolated my absolute value. I look if that number is positive or negative. That's the number on the other side of the equal sign. In this case, it's positive. So therefore, we have to go further. So what do? If it's positive, we have to write 2 equations. What are the 2 equations we write? We get rid of the absolute value, and first we write something equal to the positive number, and the other equation where you write the same exact thing, the expression without that absolute value equal to the negative. And we solve those 2 equations, and those 2 answers are the answers, and you have to end up with 2 answers. So I'm going to erase this so I'll have room to do this, okay? Because this we already finished with. So according to this rule, I have to rewrite this as 2 equations. One equation being 4 minus 2x equaling the positive number, which is just plain 8. You could write plus 8 or just plain 8. And one is going to be the same exact expression, 4 minus 2x, but now I'm going to put it negative 8. Why do we do that? Because if this number in here turns out to be a positive 8, and we take its absolute value, it will certainly give me 8. But if this number in here turns out to be a negative 8, it will still, when I take the absolute value, give me 8. So I always end up with 2 equations to solve. Either I have nothing to do because there's no equation to solve, or I end up having 2. So let's do the first equation. I'll call this number 1, and I'll call this number 2. So here's equation number 1. We're doing 4 minus 2x equals 8. Well, I know how to solve. That's not a hard equation to solve. I have to bring the 4 to the other side to get the x's alone, which will give me negative 2x equals 8 minus 4, which is 4. And I divide both sides by negative 2, so that gives me x equals negative 2. That is one solution. I'm not finished. I know some people did say negative 2 is an answer. If you wrote that and didn't go any further, your answer is not going to be correct. You have to give 2 answers. Now, let me just mention, I'm going to give you these type of problems on Delta Math. When it comes to Delta Math, and you want to put in 2 solutions, here's your page in Delta Math. You'll see on the lower right-hand corner, right around here, there's a little plus sign. There's a plus sign and a minus sign. You press that plus sign when you want to put in more than one answer. You can't just write 2 answers. You have to tell the Delta Math that you want to put in 2 answers. And you do it by first pressing this plus sign. And what will happen is it'll probably do something like this. It'll put some symbol where they'll put a, there might be, it'll give you place to put two answers with a comma in between them. But you must tell the computer that you're putting in two answers. Otherwise, you can't just write the two answers. Is that clear? Okay, so let's go on with the second part of this. Here's my second part. My second equation was 4 minus 2x equals -8. And we solve it. You're going to see, once you've solved one of them, solving the other will make it, will be somewhat easy because the steps are similar. Again, you have to subtract the 4 from both sides. And this will give you, again, -2x on the left. And on the right, instead of getting, now we have a -8 and a -4, that'll give me -12. And when I divide by -2, that gives me my second answer, x equals +6. And yes, I'm trying to think, somebody did put that answer in the chat. Okay. Cheryl, are you still having trouble seeing the board? Is the board clear to everybody?
I can see it.
Just a little.
Yeah.
It's clear.
Okay, I know I put a lot of, it's pretty messy, but I hope it's clear at least. Okay, I'll try to write bigger. All right. So now, is everybody okay with this now? Emma, you said you weren't so clear. Is it clearer now?
Nah, it's more clear, but I'm gonna do some tutoring for it probably.
Okay, can you pinpoint what you found difficult about this?
I think it's like where to start. Like I know to isolate it, like by minusing that, like I get that. I, for some reason, am just having trouble.
Okay, once you get to the point that all you have on one side is, there could be a lot of things inside.
That's where once I have it isolated, I don't really know what to do. I'm like looking at it. It's just a linear equation, I guess.
Okay, let me go back and rewrite this. Okay, because I really want this to be clear, and I'm having this conversation with Emma because she was the one who started it, but everybody should be into this. If you have a question, stop me now so we can get this clear. Here's where I've gotten to the point, right? Here's my absolute value. I have 4 minus 2x. I've already finished that first step. I've gotten rid of that 3. And I have it equal to 8. And this is a positive number, so I know I can go further.
Right. So I guess I'm just finding out the value of x in two cases.
In all cases, what you want to do is find x. You're solving an equation. This is not an inequality. This is an equation. We want to solve the x.
Right. So, but I need a negative number and I need a positive number that both get 8, right?
Right. So here's what you do. You take what's inside that absolute value.
Mm-hmm.
Take it out. 4 minus 2x. And you're going to do it twice. You're going to have 4 minus 2x equaling actually this number.
Right.
That's your first equation. the second time you're going to do the same thing. You're going to still have that 4 minus 2x, but now you're going to call this negative 8 to get your second.
Okay, that's helpful.
I'm trying to write it a little bigger also that it's clearer. And now these are just two equations, and they're not hard equations. They won't be hard equations. They won't have a million parentheses, et cetera, et cetera. Do you want me to go through the solution of these two equations again, or are we okay with that?
I think I understand that part.
Anybody else want me to do that?
Yes, Professor. Thanks.
Okay.
So I could just go in my calculator, I could just do negative 8 minus 4 and get the answer for,
Okay, well,
because that leaves me, that gets me negative 12, and 2 times 6,
but this is a negative 2.
negative 2 times 6 gives me negative 12, but that's okay, right?
Right, that's your, okay, I like to do it step by step.
Okay.
But that's right, you're getting the 6. If I do that, I'm going to do both of them completely again, because let's pretend we didn't know how to do this.
I don't.
What do we do when we have an equation? 4 minus 2x equals 8. Going back to what we first learned about equations. We want to get the x's alone. That means I don't want this 4 over here. So if I don't want this 4 over here, I have to somehow get rid of it. Now, if there's no sign in front of it, it's understood to be a positive 4. So to get rid of it, I have to do minus 4. Of course, once I do minus 4 on the left side of the equation, I have to do minus 4 on the right side of the equation as well. That just is how we do equations. We keep it balanced. Okay, the 4 and the minus 4 cancel out. What am I left with? I'm left with negative 2x. Don't forget that that negative is connected to the 2. We don't drop it. It comes down with us. What do we have on the other side of the equation? We have 8 minus 4. Well, 8 minus 4 we know is 4. And to finish the equation, we have to divide by the coefficient of the x. The number in front of the x is the negative 2. So we get 4 divided by negative 2. So that gives me x equals negative 2. So one answer to my question is negative 2. I'm not finished. I have to do the second equation. I now have to bring, again, it's a similar step. I still don't want this 4 over here. I want the x's by themselves. So again, I'll subtract 4 from both sides. Again, the 4 and the negative 4 will cancel to leave me the negative 2x. Well, what am I left with on the other side? Well, now I have a negative 8 minus 4. And again, if you're having trouble with those sign numbers, take out your calculators. I hope most of you at least ordered the calculator. I know if you got it. Just by a show of hands, do you know how to raise hands in this? Reactions, there's reactions. See if you could let me know how many people have at least ordered the, okay, only 3. The rest of you must get, by the end of this week, you must have that calculator. Okay, 5, great. All right, so how much do we get when we have negative 8 minus 4? Well, a negative 8 minus 4 is a negative 12. And now again, I divide by the negative 2 to get the x alone. And that gives me x equals 6. So here are my 2 answers. Very often these answers are put in these braces. That just means that these are the answers. You don't need to put in those braces, but that's the answer. So there are 2 answers. If you gave me only 1 answer, your question is not done properly. Any question about that now? Are we pretty much on track on this? Anybody have a question? Okay, so here's what I want to do. There seems to be a little bit of a problem. People are having a little bit of a problem with the inequalities. So this is pretty much, we're finished with absolute value equations. Since we're finished with it, we basically finished 3 topics. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a quiz that I'm not going to give it in class. I'm going to give it on Delta Math. And you'll look on Delta Math and you'll see it's a quiz. Now, a quiz or a test on Delta Math is timed. That doesn't mean I will give you until next Tuesday to complete it. I probably will post it tomorrow. And you can do it any time between tomorrow and next Tuesday. Once you start it, you have to complete it in the amount of time. I'll probably give you 50 minutes to do it. It won't be more than 10 questions. But this is going to be for a mark. Now, if you find you're sure you did the problem right and it got marked wrong on a quiz or a test, make sure you email me so I can give you credit for it, even if you got it wrong on Delta Math. Even if they marked it wrong, if you did it right and it was just a matter of putting it into the system wrong, I'm not going to in any way penalize you for that. Does anybody have any question about that? So of course, I'll send you an email reminding you, but don't forget that we are going to be having our first, I'll call it a quiz. It's only 10 questions. And it's going to be on the topics of solving equations, the first topic, solving inequalities, and absolute value equations. These 3 topics that we've learned so far. Again, it's going to be, and don't forget, as I told you, on Friday, there is no class because it is not, it's an off day. Just checking the chat, I see there's some. Yeah, you really do need the calculator. It's not an optional thing. Right now it's optional, but you really need the calculator. Thank you, Lisa. When is the quiz? Again, I'll tell you, it is to be done anytime you want it to be done. It's not in it. I will, as I said, I will probably post it tomorrow on Wednesday, and you have until next Tuesday's class to complete it. And it's on Delta Math. Is that clear, April?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. I don't see, are there people raising their hands? I didn't see that. Okay. I saw it before, but not now. Okay, so let's go back to the inequalities, and let's do 1 or 2 inequalities just as a review. And then I want to show you one other thing we could do in terms of inequality. Now, actually, I am using right now something that I call practice example sheet 1. Now, this is the department has sent out in previous terms, and I'm going to use it again, a sheet with examples of the type that you are required to know for the midterm and the final. And what I've done is I've broken it up into different chapters. So I'm going to be, if you look out for it, in your weekly folder, I will include something that's called now Practice Example Sheet 1. You will see we have covered basically, the only thing we haven't covered on here are examples that have fractions, and you could we'll do those later on. You could do it at another time. We're not going to do it right now. So you'll be aware of what you are required to know for on this chapter. This is chapter 1 in the book. Let's take an example and see how we could solve an inequality. This happens to be on this sheet, but let's look at it. This is an example that says 2 times x minus 2 is less than 4 times x plus 3. Let's go through the steps of solving this inequality. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm putting it on the board. I'm going to give you, while I'm taking attendance, I'm going to give you time to work this out. I'd like you to put your answer, give me the answer as an inequality, then put it on the number line, and then write it in interval notation. And we will then go through this one very thoroughly in case you're still finding it difficult. Is that okay? Everybody with me? Everybody on board? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to just stop the recording for the meantime. I think that I don't know that the level 2 problems were harder than this, were they?
I feel like they were maybe
a little.
harder.
I usually got stuck at some step and didn't know what to do, or we get an answer that was in a proper fraction and then wasn't sure how I was supposed to enter in delta math. It was literally the only section that really gave me trouble.
I didn't think that the questions I gave you came out with fractions.
A lot of them came out with
So
fractions.
they did, okay.
Yeah, I was really bombing on that part. It took me a really long time to be able
Which
to.
one, was that the level 2?
Yeah, like I was writing.
Okay, I'm gonna look at that level 2 again. I will not, I'll tell you on the quiz, I certainly will not give you anything that involves fractions because I really have not done fractions yet.
Okay.
Okay? So let's see what happens when we try to do this one. Obviously, the first step is to remove the parentheses. So we're going to get 2x minus 4 less than 4x plus 12. Any question about this step? All I've done is use the distributive property to remove the parentheses. Okay, next step.
The next step is to isolate you got to get the x on the left side and you got to get the value on the right side. So you got minus 4x over on the right side.
Okay, so it's extremely important when you're solving an inequality that you end up with the x's on the left side. Even if you don't do it on an equation, on an inequality, you must. So I'm going to, now either I can get rid of, let's get rid of this 4 first. The first thing is, if I only want x's on this side, is to get rid of this 4 that doesn't have an x. So I'll add 4 to this side, which means I have to add 4 to this side. Whatever I do to one side, I do to the other side. This will cancel out that 4 and leave me only 2x. I don't change the direction of the inequality. It stays a less than. This stays 4x. And now this is 12 plus 4. Those are like terms, so that's giving me 16. Okay, so now I want to get this 4x to the left side because I only want x's on this side and numbers on this side. So this is a positive 4x. I'm going to do minus 4x from both sides. And 2x minus 4x gives me negative 2x. And that's less than, well, this is canceled out, 16. Everybody okay with me so far? Notice I
Yeah.
kept it the less than sign because I did not do what? What would have caused me to change this in less than to a greater?
Oh, I thought it was changed.
Dividing by a negative.
Right.
Are we
I
not dividing
divide-
by negative
Have I divided by a negative yet?
Yep.
But aren't you going to?
I'm going to, but have I done it yet?
No.
At this point, I haven't done it. I'm not changing it yet. Last step, get the x by itself by dividing by the coefficient of the x, which is negative 2. I'm going to have to divide both sides by negative 2. Aha! This is where I have to be careful. Now, I have to watch that. As soon as I divide or multiply by a negative number, I have to change the direction of the inequality. So this will become an x because I'm canceling out the negative 2. This side is 16 divided by negative 2, which is negative 8. And since the number I divided by is negative, this becomes, and my answer becomes x greater than negative 8. Now, when it comes to delta math on this, I saw some people had problems. When you do put in an answer in delta math for an inequality, for an equation where it's just a number, you just put in the number. But an inequality is not just a number. It's also a direction. It's not just the negative 8 that counts. It's whether it's greater than that. You have to type in x, and you have to put in the x. You have to put in the greater than or less than or whatever symbol it is, and they give you a choice of symbols, and then you have to put in the number. Okay, so that is how the answer would be written in inequality 4. The next thing we wanted to do is to put it in on a number line. So how do we put it on the number line? Okay, so here's my number line. Here's my 0. Let's go by 2s. Negative 2, negative 4, because I have to get to negative 8. Negative 6, negative 8. Let's go a little further. Here's negative 10. And this would be 2, 4, 6, 8. Okay. To write x is greater than negative 8 is our starting point here is negative 8. Now the question is that an open circle or a filled in circle? And we know it's got to be an open circle because there's no equal sign over here. It's just greater than, not greater than or equal to. Also, your arrow has to go to the right because this is pointing to the right. This is what it would look like on the number line. Now, when you're doing the number line and the delta math, let me mention, you start at the number, you go to the negative 8, and then you drag it to the direction that you want to go, either to the left or to the right. Also, the default for the point is always filled in. Now, if you don't want it to be a filled in circle, you have to just click on it. And when you click on it, it becomes an open circle. So you have to decide, should it be an open circle or a closed circle, but make sure your diagram looks like that. Last thing, how do we write this in interval notation? Well, remember our interval, here's where our arrow is. That's telling me what interval, what part of the graph I'm taking. Obviously, it's starting at negative 8 because we always start on the left. And it keeps going to the right all the way to infinity. let's remember, since this is an open circle, it would be a parentheses, and at the infinity, it's also a parentheses. So that's our answer in interval notation. Are we all clear on this now? Okay. You should. I will give you these type of examples, but I will not give you anything that involves fractions at this point. I'll make sure that the problems that come up won't have fractions. Let me just go a bit further, and then maybe we'll break up into groups, and I'll give you some problems and we can break it up to groups. I just want to do one other topic that has to do with inequalities. Okay, so I'm going to erase this. And that's the case where we sometimes have something that has a double inequality. Suppose I have something like this. 9 is less than 3x plus 12 is less than 15. Let's say here. Now this is a strange looking thing. Why would nobody ever writes something, an equation with two equal signs? What does this mean? What does it mean when we have this double inequality symbol? And actually, it's sort of a way of a shortcut of writing two things. I'm going to show you what it means, and then I'm going to show you the easy way to solve it. What this really means is that there are two inequalities being done here. One inequality is the 9 is 3x less than 3x plus 12. And the second inequality that's being done is the 3x plus 12 is less than 15. There are actually two problems being written here. There's this problem, 9 less than 3x plus 12. And there's this problem, 3x plus 12 is less than 15. And the fact that it's being used as a double inequality indicates that both of these things are happening at the same time. Let's look at a much simpler situation of this and then come back to this. Suppose I had something much simpler, something like this. X is less than 5 and greater than -1. We have the X in the middle. On one side, it's saying X is greater than -1. On the other side, it's saying X is less than 5. It's a double inequality. Again, if I wanted to, I could separate it. I'm going to show you what it means separate, and then I'm going to show you really the easy way to do it. This means -1 is less than X. And also at the same time, X is less than 5. Now, X less than 5, that makes sense because I have the X on the left side. But -1 less than X is not written the way we usually write it. We want the X to be on the left side and the number on the right side. This, if you read it, says -1 is less than X. The smaller is the -1, the bigger is the X. I can totally turn this around. This means the same thing as the X is greater than -1. When I read this, actually, when I have this double inequality, I usually read it from the middle. I say X greater than -1 and X less than 5. Yes, it's correct to write -1 and say -1 is less than X, less than -5. But really what it means is that the X is greater than the -1 and the x is less than 5. Now let's see how that looks on a number line. Let's see what that means on a number. So here's -1, -2. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. First, let's draw x greater than -1. Let's see if I can do this in different colors. I don't know if it'll work. To say x is greater than -1 would mean that we'd have an open circle at -1 and an arrow going to the right all the way to infinity. To say x is less than 5 means that we have an open circle at 5 and an arrow going all the way to the left.
So when you get a problem like that,
Let me, Emma, you know what? I'm not going to answer your question until I finish it because I'm going to show you a really easy way to do it. Okay, now I just want you to see if you can understand what's going on here. Okay? So keep your question. Write it down or something. I'm going to answer your question, but I'm not going to answer it right now. Okay? Now, the fact that what happens if I made a statement like this? It had nothing to do with math. I went to the store and I fell down. What happens when I say and? Doesn't it mean both things have to have happened? If I went to the store, but I didn't fall down, that statement wouldn't be true. Or if I fell down and I didn't go to the store, that statement wouldn't be true either. The only way that statement is true is if both of those things happen. That is in essence what and means. To say that x is greater than -1 and at the same time x is less than 5 means both of those things have to be occurring at the same time. Which means on the number line, it has to be where the two sections overlap. In other words, the true answer to this is starting at -1 and going until 5. I can't use the section to the left of -1 because that doesn't work for x greater than -1. I can't use the sections that's to the right of 5 because that doesn't work for x less than 5. In order for both of these things to be true, that the x has to be greater than -1 and the x has to be less than 5 would mean that on the number line, it'd have to be between the number -1 and 5, those two numbers. Now let me show you the easy way to do this, and then we'll come back to the hard problem. Does everybody understand why I'm only using this section? I'm only using this section because I'm looking where the two are overlapping. I'm going to erase this and show you how actually the symbolism of this actually shows the same thing. Here's my number line again. Here's my 0. Here's 5. Here's -1. Of course, all the other numbers. We're trying to graph x less than 5 and the -1, x greater than the -1 and the x less than 5. In other words, -1 less than x less than 5. We want to graph this on the number line. If you look at it, the way it's set up, I always have the smaller numbers on the left and the larger numbers on the right because these are less than signs. So this has to be the smaller number. This has to be the bigger number. Remember, it opens to the bigger. It's pointing to the smaller. So really, we're talking about, if you look at it, numbers that are between -1 and 5. And since this is a less than sign, that would be an open circle at -1. This is also a less than sign, no equal sign, so that would be an open circle over there, and everything in between. Do you see how the inequality and the number lines sort of match? Here's your -1, here's your 5, and instead of an X, we just draw a line in between them. Now, this would have been a less than or equal to, we would have then filled in the circle just the way we did before. Not only that, I can write this in interval notation. The interval we're interested in is starting on the left at -1 and ending at 5. This interval doesn't go all the way to infinity. Here's my interval. My starting point is -1. My ending point is 5. And since these are open circles, I'll put parentheses. And if you notice how this matches this and it matches this, where I have the 1 on the left, the 5 on the right, instead of having the X, we now have the parentheses to tell us that they're not including the -1 and the 5. To use this double inequality, we always have to have it set up in such a way that on the left side is the smaller number, on the right side is the larger number, and the inequality signs are either less than or equal to. Okay, is there any question about how this looks on the number line? How this translates to this? Any question before I go further? Okay, so now I want to show you how to solve this thing, because that's really the important thing. Let's go over here. I want to solve this double inequality, and I want to do it in a simpler way for me to get the final answer. And the whole thing that I want to do is end up with just a plain X in the middle, so to look something like that, where an X in the middle and one number on the left and another number on the right. And there's much more in the middle here than just a plain X. But I'm going to do this focusing on what's in the middle and try to get the middle to be just plain X. And just like the first thing, if I would see a 3x plus 12 in an equation, the first thing I'd want to do is get the 12 out of there. So how do I get, if this is a plus 12, how do I get rid of the 12? I'll have to minus 12. Now keep in mind, I'm minusing 12 in the middle, but what am I doing? I'm really doing two problems at once. I'm doing this problem, 3x plus 12 is less than 15. And I'm also doing this problem, 9 is less than 3x plus 12, but I'm doing it all at once, which means that if I'm subtracting 12 in the middle, I have to subtract the 12 on the right side and also on the left side. Whatever I do in the middle, I have to do at either end because I'm really doing double work. I'm doing two problems at once. Okay, and now I'm going to do this. 9 minus 12 will give me -3. I leave this sign alone because I'm just subtracting a 12, right? I'm not dividing or multiplying by a negative number. This leaves me 3x, and this is 15 minus 12, so that leaves me +3. So whatever I do in the middle, I do the same thing at either end, not just in one end, but both ends. I've gotten further, but I still don't have a plain X just in the middle. What do I have to do when I want to get a plain X in the middle? I have to divide by 3. But again, what I do in the middle, I have to do at either end. So I have to divide 3 on the right and also 3 on the left. Now, Negative 3 divided by 3 is negative 1. What kind of a number am I dividing by? It happens to be a positive number. Do I have to switch the direction of the inequality?
No.
No, because I'm dividing by a positive number. So this is less than 3x divided by x just gives me x. And finally, 3 divided by 3 is 3. Again, we have not changed the direction of these inequalities because all we did was divide by a positive number. I'm sorry, somebody should have. How much is 3 divided by 3?
1.
It's
1.
1. Thank you. And notice I have now solved this. I've gone from this complex double inequality to a much simpler double inequality. If I want to give the answer now on the number line, here's what I do. On the left, I put the negative 1. On the right, I put the positive 1. These are both open circles because these are just plain less than. And once we have the two circles, all we have to do is connect them. Here's my number line. So I plot both of these points, and in place of where the X is, I put this line connecting them. If I want the answer in interval notation, I put the number on the left first, that's negative 1. I put the number on the right second, there's my 1, and decide whether I should use brackets or parentheses, and since
Wanna
it's
do
less
parentheses.
than, they're both parentheses. So here's my solution, my number line solution, my interval notation solution. Are we okay with that?
Could you go over it one more
Yes.
time, please?
Okay, where should, just tell me where to start.
From you subtract the 12
Okay,
at the top where you subtract the 12. Yeah.
all the way up here. Okay,
Nice.
let's start this again. I have in the middle 3x plus 12. So I want to get rid of the 12. Remember, I'm trying to get the thing so it's just plain x in the middle.
Yeah.
I always focus on what's happening in the middle, and that's where I decide what to do. I want to get the x value. So the first thing I want to do is get rid of this 12. So I have to minus 12. Whatever I do in the middle, I do at either end. So I'm going to do minus 12 on this end and minus 12 on this end also. You have to focus on the fact that you're really doing two questions at once. It's much quicker. You could have separated them and done each one separately.
Mhm.
This is much easier, and the answer looks easier to deal with if you do it this way. But you have to remember to do it at either end. So here we're getting 9 minus 12, and that gives me negative 3. Here I just got rid of the 12, so it left me the 3x. And here I did 15 minus 12, and that left me plain 3. Okay, so far?
Yeah.
Yeah, Stacy, that was you, Stacy, right?
Yes.
Okay. So now, again, I focused, what am I left with in the middle? I have a 3x.
X.
What do I want to be left with in the middle? I want to be left with plain x. So in order to get x alone, I have to divide by 3. Whatever I do in the middle, I have to do at either end. So I have to divide this by 3 and this by 3. Okay, negative 3 divided by 3 gives me negative 1. 3x divided by 3 gives me plain x. And 3 divided by 3 is 1. I'm really doing two problems, so therefore there's this additional work, but it's not hard. So I know I'm finished right here because now I have just plain x in the middle. Is it clear how I got this?
Yes.
Okay, so now let's look at the number line. It's very easy to draw this on the number line. This double inequality is always done the same way. There'll be an x in the middle, and these signs will be either less than signs or less than or equal. And the reason that is because this is done in the order of the number line. The smaller number always has to be on the left, the larger number always has to be on the right? So that when you go to draw it on the number line, it's really easy. Here's your -1, here's your +1. It's everything connecting, anything between -1 and 1. That's really what this means. You see how the X is in between these two numbers? That's
Yes.
really how you could read it. X is between -1 and 1. If you wanted to read this to somebody who was really a math person and you didn't want to use less than symbols, well, you could really say what this means is the number X. The number we're looking for is someplace between -1 and 1. When it comes to the number, yes,
So at no point we will get two positive, right? It's always a negative and a positive.
no, it might be they're both positive. They could be both positive. You don't have to, because I could have something like this. I could have it between 1 and 5, let's say,
Okay.
right? It just has to be that the smaller number, whatever the smaller number, if this is 1, then yeah, this is going to be a negative. But if this is 15, this could be just a 10. You could have
Oh.
numbers between 10 and 15, right?
Okay. The smaller
As
number
long as
always
this
on the left.
number is the smaller number, and this number is the larger number.
So the smaller number always on the left, regardless of the sign.
Correct. And here's how you, and if you look at it, your interval notation is almost exactly the same. Here are your two numbers, -1 and 1. And all you have to do is decide whether you're using brackets or parentheses, depending on whether these are open circles or closed circles.
Yes, I understand now. Thank you.
Are we okay?
Yes.
Okay, here's what we're going to do now. We have about 20 minutes left. I think I'm going to put you in breakout rooms. I'm going to put two problems on the board, of one of the other type and one of this type. And I'm going to give you time to work in groups together to get the answers. Again, I still have you as a complete group, you're going to, I'll look at the Delta math. I may just take out those hard problems and just say, forget about that as part of your homework and give it as extra credit to those who actually did it. I'm going to look at them. I didn't realize there were fractions on them. I am going to give you some questions on absolute value. So look for new questions. Again, I will be posting a test starting tomorrow. I'm going to call it a quiz. It's going to be 10 questions on Delta math. Again, I'll send out an email, but just be aware, the way it works on Delta math tests is you can start anytime before the due date, but as I said, I'll probably give you like 45 minutes or 50 minutes as a total amount of time to do the problems. And once you start, once you sit for it, don't stop in the middle because your time will run out. Give yourself a complete, let's say, hour's time where you know you can sit at the test and do it. I know somebody, one of the people here is entitled to extra time. If you're entitled to extra time, just send me a notice and I'll give you the extra time that's necessary to take the quiz. Okay, so let me put two problems on the board for you to work on. And then I'll break you up into groups. Everybody's going to do the same two problems. I don't know if we'll have time to come back and do both problems, but we'll try. Okay, so here's problem number 1. And example. The double inequality. Okay, and what I'd like you to do is solve this problem and do it like all inequalities, draw it on the number line and also give it an integral notation.
No,
I'd also like you to do this problem.
completo. Sigas haciendo lo de la escuela. Si no tienes ganas de, pues no vayas. Gracias. Ah, pues entonces me estoy jodiendo.
Solve this, solve this,
Haces una boba.
Apple Valley question.
Sí, es tu culpa, porque tú tienes ropa.
3 sudaderas,
Sí, 3 sudaderas y qué más.
un maón.
Un mahón, ¿yeah? ¿Tú quieres que yo me meta a buscarte todo lo que se te recompró?
Ah, porque todo lo que se me
I'm gonna mute
todos los
it.
maones no están arreglados,
Ujú,
están nuevos y largos.
ujú.
Ah,
Okay, so now I'm gonna break you up into groups of 4. Okay.
Not everyone finished writing down
Oh, okay.
my group.
You know what? I'll join each group and give them time to write down the problem. Okay? So I'm gonna, okay.